Good morning, everyone. This is Jeffy Kennedy, author of epic fantasy romance. I'm here with my first cup of coffee. It's wonderful. Today is, say it with me, people, it is Friday, woohoo, August 9th. Um, and a lot of you are going back to school or going back to school-related activities. It's amazing to me how many people are closely tied to the academic calendar. And I feel like I've been having this conversation with a number of people because, for example, the kids in our neighborhood started school today. How do I know this? Because they put out a little bulletin. I myself am not tied to the academic calendar in any way, shape, or form, other than all y'all. Uh, but they, put out a dispatch saying, "Hey, kids are starting school again, August 9th. Watch out for the kids." Um, because if they didn't, we would just gleefully run them over. I feel like I should caveat that that is sarcasm. I'm kidding. Uh, anyway, so I happen to know. But I also happen to know because it feels like everybody is saying, "Oh no, summer's over." And I believe I have had this rant before. In fact, I know I have because my stepsister actually gave me a gift one year that I was complaining about people preemptively ending summer, saying, "Oh no, summer's over. Just because the kids are back in school, just because teachers are back to work, just because all of you people who are academia adjunct in one way or another, and you have resumed your calendar year, does not mean that summer is over. People, give us a break. It's August. Uh, Summer doesn't technically end, as if these things matter, until mid-September, late September, right? Autumn equinox. Uh, and depending on where you live, you might have months of summery weather left. We have months left. It doesn't get cold in Santa Fe until Thanksgiving. And I feel like I should knock on wood because otherwise, who knows? But yeah, it's still absolute summer. I'm planting things, things are blooming. Uh, don't tell me summer is over. Uh, and I know that one year for my birthday, which is coming up very soon, a couple of weeks, my, ooh, 2 weeks from yesterday, yeah, my stepsister Hope, who is thoughtful and delightful, sent me a really great iced tea pitcher and iced tea maker from the now defunct Tivana. I was very sad that Tivana went away because I liked them. I really liked their strainer, their iced tea strainer. Alas. Uh, I still have the pitcher, but I need to find a strainer. The strainer broke. Doesn't matter. Uh, but she sent me for my birthday saying that she had paid attention to some rant I'd put on social media about how I was, it was still summer and I still wanted summer. So anyway, that takes care of the cats in New Mexico. Well, only the New Mexico weather part of our podcast. I should mention that we got tons of rain last night, monsoon rains, lightning, rained all night. Fabulous. It was amazing. Um, as part of my ongoing garden efforts, those of you who listen frequently, I'm sorry, but you know what you're here for. Uh, I have, as part of my ongoing making my garden better efforts, I am getting more assiduous about watering because I feel like I've never, lo these 15 years, I'm 10 days short of the 15 years ago, we moved to Santa Fe. I feel like I've never quite gotten the rhythm of watering here. And it was a chance remark by one of my friends who is an intrepid gardener and has lived in New Mexico all her life. When I said something about my rain gauge, that I would have to see like how much rain we got. And I forgot to look to see how much rain we got. I should go look. Squirrel. I'm going to go look. Well, we got over 1 1/8 inches of rain. What? Uh, so my friend mentioned we were talking about getting rain. She's down in Albuquerque, and uh, I I said I had a rain gauge and blah blah blah, and she said, "Well, of course you do, because you can't be a gardener without one." And it was this aha moment for me because I thought, "Oh, wait, I'm supposed to do something with that information. There's a reason exists for this metric." However, it was not completely useful because, like, having 1 1/8 inches of rain, I know is a lot of rain. It's a lot of rain for us. So it's like, okay, that's great, but what do I do with this information? How does this translate into action? And I do feel like I'm going to go somewhere with this for once, because I talk about metrics and writing a lot, right? So let's put a pin in that and come back to it. So the thing about trying to figure out how do I apply a metric, right? It doesn't help me to know that there's 1 1/8 inches of rain, except that my garden doesn't need to be watered today, right? Unfortunately, I watered it yesterday morning because my point, if I will eventually get to it, is that I've been trying to water more because I think I have been underwatering, and the garden is, son of a gun, responding. So what I did was I bought some soil meters, moisture meters, and I've been using those to see how wet or dry the garden is. The secret garden in the back. And a great revelation to me, which probably should not be, I'm full of great revelations lately, is that different parts of the garden dry out sooner than others. It makes me think of that George Carlin joke, like, have you ever noticed that the Cheerios on the sides of the bowl dry out first? It's because they're closer to the sun. I love jokes that point out poor conclusions like that. But yeah, some parts of the secret garden, and I will put a post on this show. And I think you've seen pictures of my garden anyway. Some parts dry out a lot faster than other parts. Go figure. Okay, so this should not be the revelation it is, but it is. So, like, because I always water the whole garden. I mean, I can't do it at once, but when I water everything. I don't have to. Water is precious here. I should caveat that. For those of you who live in water plentiful places, water is our most expensive utility. So we are always looking to conserve water. I mean, that's like on an annual average, right? More than air conditioning, more than heat. It's water. It's the desert. So, I think that it's working. I'm excited about this progress in the garden. It's looking nice, um, but I think this is one question that we do with writing is we think about, okay, we know certain things about our process, right? And I'm always talking about how we have to rediscover that it's an iterative process. I'm forever rediscovering things about my own process. Progress on Reluctant Wizard, by the by. I finished revising it, and I am up to 75,000 words, which means that I've got about 9,000 words left. I think I know how it's going to end, and I should be done early next week. So I think I'm pretty much on track for that. So that's great. Um, but one reason that I know I have 9,000 words left, for those of you who may be totally new to the podcast, those of you who've been listening for a long time, you know that I use all kinds of predictors. I don't outline ahead of time, but I do know when I hit certain story beats that I can then calculate how much of the story I have left. And this story is shorter than most, which is okay, because for me and for like most every writer I know, the books get longer as you go. And so this is the first book in a trilogy. It's the same world, but it's kicking off a new storyline, or it's kicking off a storyline from a different direction, might be better to say. And so it really does read like first book in a series. And you know that each book is going to get longer. So it's fine with me for this book to be closer to 85,000 words. It's going to come out, I'm predicting, about 84,000 words. And I know this because, when I hit my Act One climax where all stakes are set, I then know that that's a quarter of the book. And all along, this book has just been, even though it's like, really, is it going to be this much shorter? And yeah, it is. I'm coming in within 1,000, 1,500 words of the predicted climaxes. And like Act Three climax, I just wrote it. I posted to social media that the Act Three climax, it's funny because they're never what I think they're going to be. I mean, even with me not outlining ahead of time, not being a pre-plotter, I still don't know that what it's like, what the climaxes will be. And it turned out to be like this feat of library magic, which I'm amused at myself because I feel like it should be something much more exciting than that. But then everybody who saw that post and responded is like, hell's yeah, library magic. So okay, this is what you're getting with this book, with Reluctant Wizard. So these are ways that I use metrics that are really helpful to me. And I encourage people to keep track of these things, to know how many words you can write a day. How many words can you write a day without having rebound? How do you apply those metrics? I think keeping track of your actual progress, of what you really do, is hugely important. But then knowing what are you going to do with that information later, that's another really big piece. And I probably had a segue about this when I initially thought about it, but now I just have the notes. So one thing I've been thinking about, and I think that many of us are doing, is watching the with complete bemusement. We're having an argument about what bemusement means. And aside, this gal from the Netherlands was saying that it really bothered her that people use it to mean amused instead of confused. And I said, well, hey, I had to go look it up because I use it as a combination of confused and amused at the same time. That there's definitely a quality of being entertained by it, maybe even affectionately entertained, but certainly not upset by it, not that kind of confusion. And it turns out bemused means to be made to muse about it, to be made to think about something. So there is that quality of thinking about it and being kind of puzzled. But it turns out it's mainly in the US usage. And we got confirmation from like one of our UK authors. In the US, there is this quality of being amused to it that is not in other English uses, which is interesting. Anyway, we have been bemused here in the US, not with affection, but certainly with plenty of hilarity at J.D. Vance's campaigning as Trump's running mate and the bizarre stuff he's doing. And it's funny because I read J.D. Vance's memoir. I may have mentioned on here, Hillbilly Elegy. I read it I looked it up before, so I've talked about this, in like 2015, because a friend of mine was going to write a memoir. And so we tandem read a few of the big best-selling memoirs of that year. And so I read it then before I knew of J.D. Vance as anybody but this guy who wrote a memoir. And even though I had problems with the book, which I believe I've already covered, and in general, I liked it. I mean, I thought it was a good model of, I thought it was a well-written memoir. I thought there were problems with the content, mainly that he leaves out the existence of people of color, which at the time I felt like, well, I won't go all into it again, but now I understand reflects a very deliberate worldview, right? People of color don't exist. Amusingly, when I talked about this, like on Facebook, I had several people pushing back on me, and I'm sorry if you're listening, but explaining to me that they like never spoke to a black person until they were in their 30s, that they truly did grow up in all white communities where they never saw a colored person. Oh, we don't say colored. I apologize for that. Where that is the word that they're using, and I did not mean to do that. I apologize. Where they never met a person of color, where they'd never seen a black person. And I wanted to tell them, I feel like this is not the flex that you think it is. It's, you know, maybe it's an explanation, and maybe, yeah, okay, JD Vance never met a black person before he wrote his memoir. Let's not go there. I know I already went there, but let's come back out of there. Uh, anyway, I realized that I had a residual level of respect for J.D. Vance because I thought the book was smart and interesting and had some insights. And then one of my friends pointed out to me that he undoubtedly had a ghostwriter, which was another aha moment for me, which I should have thought of. This particular friend has been a ghostwriter. She's had a pretty decent career as a ghostwriter, so of course she knows. And I should have thought about it. And I don't expect most other people to, but like I'm in the industry. But it's very true that almost every book that you read by a celebrity of some sort is going to be ghostwritten, and there will be no credit. There's no evidence of it. This is how ghostwriting works. And I know this like from my friend, like you have to sign these ironclad contracts that you will never, ever, ever reveal yourself to be a ghostwriter or hint in any way, because they want it to seem as if J.D. Vance wrote this book when undoubtedly some very smart writer wrote it for him. Uh, and it's worth keeping in mind because it does create the illusion um, that he's like a thoughtful, intelligent person, which is like this last week of campaigning has showed himself to be not, like rather astonishingly not. Um, but and there's no shame in using a ghostwriter because despite what many people think, it is not easy to be a writer. It is not easy to write a book. It takes time and skill, and talent helps, but it takes a lot of effort to refine that ability uh, to write a book, to write a thoughtful memoir, which is why we were studying those memoirs, right? Ann Patchett has this great story that she tells, and I did stop to look it up. It's in the book, The Getaway Car, A Practical Memoir About Writing and Life, which I highly recommend. Uh, I'll link to it in the show notes. Really excellent book. I love Ann Patchett as a writer. I love her nonfiction. And so in this story, she talks about being at a party. And I believe, I may get details wrong. I apologize. I read it a while ago. But I believe it was a party for her husband's people. And so, like she's there being dutiful spouse. And somebody asks her the inevitable question, what do you do? Oh, I'm a writer. And any of you who are writers are out there are already kind of like cringing a little bit inside your skin, right? Because you know how these conversations go. And they're like, oh, have I heard of you? What have you written? This kind of thing. And, so she's trying to forge her way through this, being polite and, being good spouse and like not getting irritated. And this woman says to her, well, I believe everyone has one great novel in them. And Anne slowly starts to lose her shit over this, which it's a great story because I think we can all empathize with this. And she's like, what does that mean? And the woman says, well, I think everybody has a great novel in them that they could write. And it's like, well, does this apply to other things? Do you think everyone has one great flower arrangement in them? Does everyone have one great ice sculpture in them? Does everyone have one great symphony in them? And I can't remember exactly how it resolves, but I have this image in my head of like her husband sliding up and very carefully edging her away from the conversation and the rant. Uh, but I think of that often, whenever, especially when I'm in those kinds of conversations. It's like, does everyone have one great flower arrangement in them? So, that was a rambly podcast today. I'm finishing this book. I have book brain, but at least it was longer than Monday's. There were complaints from one person. One person complained, and we all know what her name is, Kathy Kennedy. Uh, so hopefully today was better. I hope you all have a fantabulous weekend, and I will talk to you on Monday. You all take care. Bye bye.